Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Zach Ingo Finch and I am your host today. Gregory is away today. We have some scheduling conflicts, but I still wanted to record this. I don't think he's going to be devastated to not listen to me do another in-depth episode. Today is, as I alluded to yesterday, an episode about Maya Yoshida, former Saint. Had a big international career. And when I was doing all of the research into our current internationals, and a couple of special mentions that maybe I'll talk about next week, I think most people can guess, two of them won the Euros. I looked into the career of Maya Yoshida as well and realized that it's massive. So really, he had a very, very long international career. It's only recently ended in 2022. And he played a big part in, I think, getting Japan into a place on the international stage for football where it is now, which is 2 World Cups, last round of 16. So yeah, I just wanted to talk him. I miss him at the club. I'm aware that I think he had a divisive opinion, if I remember rightly. Like, there were people that didn't like him, and occasionally he would be really, really good, but then also he would make mistakes, and that was pretty bad. But he's still ripping it up in the MLS. He's playing for LA Galaxy, former home of David Beckham. Most recently played alongside former Saint Billy Sharp, who had a little bit of a stint out there. But he's still, putting in the work out there. So I just wanted to sort of go back and have a look at one of my favourite players and maybe explain a little bit why, I guess. But he was one of the few footballers I'd always kind of see around town, like in Southampton when I was younger. You're looking sort of in my university days, about 10 years back. And a friend of mine, Lewis, who used to work at John Lewis, ironically, would always see him like knocking around shopping there, usually with Tandari Lee as well. But he played 154 games for us, so he was, he was an important player during his time at the club. But he played 126 games for Japan, which obviously international caps are harder to come by and harder to get. But he's had a solid international career. He joined the international setup. He joined the club in 2012. Debuted in a 6-1 defeat to Arsenal, which is funny considering we've just lost to them again, replacing Jos Højveld. And I was sort of not following him at that point, but I kind of got into following the Samurai Blues, or the Japanese national squad, in 2013. And that was because of me catching on television a Confederations Cup clash, which between Japan and Italy. Italy beat Japan 4-3, but I just remember being at a crazy game and sort of watching and thinking, some of these players are really good. And in that side, we had Kazuki Honda, who played for AC Milan famously, who also I found out was Nagoya Grampus alumni, if you paid attention to the last 2 podcasts, alongside Yoshida. Kagawa, who was at United at the time, so he was involved in English football. And Okazaki, who wasn't at Leicester yet, he was at Mainz at the time, but was about to make the move within a year or so, and obviously famously part of that 2016 Leicester winning the league. So yeah, they had like that. I remember watching the game, and it was just a really fun, intense game of football. And after that, I kind of sort of started paying attention, and with Yoshida being sort of our player, I think that was one of the reasons I switched on to at the time. So like off and on after that, I kind of paid attention to the Samurai Blues and was aware of that Yoshida was quite involved, but I wasn't. I think I didn't realize like how much of an impact he as a player had on his international team. Because as I said, for Saints, he was very hot and cold. He would sometimes be in the sides, he would be sometimes out. He was kind of utilized by all the different managers right up until he left. He left when we were still under Hasenhüttl, and sort of went off. And I think he went to Italy, played alongside, I want to say Gabbiadini actually, for a little bit before a year in Germany that wasn't that great. And obviously now being at LA Galaxy and ending his international career in 2022. So yeah, I hope that you're excited to join me on this journey. If you're not, I apologise. I'm a bit of a history buff without the Southampton part of it, but this allowed me to kind of explore that nerdy stuff while also keeping it pretty football related. So let's dive into it after a word from our partners at Zencastr. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at the Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes the ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. So yeah, let's jump straight into the illustrious international career of former Saint Maya Yoshida. So he had 126 caps for Japan and captained the side for a number of years also, including some of those World Cup years that I've talked about. During that time, he managed to score 12 goals. Whilst he hasn't been selected from 2022 onwards, he is also now the president of Japan's Professional Soccer Players Association. So, and he was also one of the, I think he gave out an inaugural award quite recently for it. So, rolling back the clock a little bit, he made his debut in the Japan national team before he was a Saint. He made his debut in 2010 against Yemen, but he didn't manage to make the year's World Cup squad that year due to a fractured finger, which was sort of, I think he was unhappy about, but I think he was also just really glad to get that cap at the beginning. And I don't think that it mattered. He went on again to be a really influential member, but I think he probably would have liked to have been at that World Cup too. He was called up to the AFC Asian Cup in 2011, which he scored his first international goal in the tournament, securing a draw against Jordan. So after that one game, he played the rest of the group's games, but was sent off in the semis in a 3-2 win against Qatar. And once he'd served his suspension, he was back and in the side for the final against Australia. And Japan went on to win that cup due to a goal from another ex-Saint, Tadanari Lee. So they got to both play during that time and win a cup, which if you look at the rest of Saints, not a huge amount of us have not a huge amount of our players have got some trophies under their belt. Whether it's a sort of, you consider it to be a tin pot trophy or not, still a trophy at the end of the day. He went on to be a big part of Japan's side that year, and after that tournament, succeeded in keeping 6 additional clean sheets and even scored the winning goal against North Korea, which is a bit crazy, but he started off 2012 with 3 more clean sheets, and Japan went on to qualify for the World Cup after drawing 1-1 with Australia. So he was involved in, obviously, after that, the aforementioned Confederations Cup, which Japan didn't win a single game, but they tried, especially that 4-3 against Italy, which was a fun game to watch. And here's hoping for, and that is what kind of got me onto some of those players, specifically big fan of Kazuki Honda as well. I'd always hit him up and sign him for my teams and Football Manager. And he went on, I think he's still in coaching. At one point he was managing the Cambodian national side, but he's another, again, all these people all from that one small club that me and Greg decided to randomly start following this year on the J League. Just because Greg's brother lives quite near Nagoya. So it's a bit of a weird coincidence, but nice. He managed to get into the Brazil World Club squad as well. And he started all 3 of the matches. But unfortunately, they lost all of their matches and went out. But he still continued to be part of the international team. He went on to score his first goal in 3 years against Honduras, where they won 6-0. So he was in amongst the goals as well. And, I remember him scoring a few goals here and there for Saints. But yeah, it turns out, of his 126 caps, sort of like once every 10 games, he would knock a goal in, which as the captain and defender is kind of nice. It, makes me think of sort of commanding centre-backs we've had over the years and their sort of goal-scoring contributions. Think of sort of Virgil van Dijk and more recently, Taylor Harwood-Bellis getting in amongst the goals. So he's done all right. He did, however, take responsibility for his side missing out on the 2015 AFC Asian Cup. This is resulted in a goal and a penalty shootout that Japan then went on to lose. And he came in the post-match interview and kind of said, yep, I definitely shouldn't have given that away. So yeah, that wasn't really ideal. He went on to score a brace in the same year against Bulgaria to help Japan reach the Kirin Cup soccer final, which they unfortunately lost to Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is not ideal considering it. Another name for that cup is the Japan Cup, and I think when it started, it originally had things like you had club teams in it, so it was like sort of I think Middlesbrough took part at one point. I'll have to double check that again, but yeah. So it's still, I think the most recent time that competition was played was 2022, and Tunisia won it. So don't really know how they pick it up, but it looks to be sort of a promotion from some sort of Japanese soft drink company that essentially resulted in a football tournament that occasionally a couple people play in. But yeah, so that wasn't ideal, but scoring a brace for your country is always nice. And then off the back of that, he went on to captain his side for the first time in March 2017. So with that, Japan qualified for the 2018 World Cup, and he was selected to play every minute of the group games. So he played really, really well. He was lauded by the media off the back of his performances, which probably was nice for him and nice for Saints fans. And I don't remember how sort of Twitter and all that lot was at the time, but I wouldn't be surprised that, he's played really so well at the Euros, we need to start him every game kind of thing. But I know that it was a time that, he had sort of peak form for club and country. He was also selected at the end of that year to take part in the 2019 AFC Asian Club. But this caused a bit of a headache for Hasenhüttl all the time because he was a more regular face and then obviously disappears for a month, and it's never ideal. I think you see it with clubs now with sort of the African Cup of Nations and how players will end up going away because obviously they want to, most people would want to play for their country, but then it kind of upsets the domestic season quite a lot. So it was one of those sort of situations. And he said that he was fully aware of sort of the impact and it was the risk he wanted to take to play for Japan. He captained the side right through to the final, but lost 3-1 to Qatar and gave away a penalty in that match, which wasn't ideal. He didn't get another call up until later that year. So there was some speculation he might drop out of the side. But then when he did get called up, he immediately captained them again and helped them, go on throughout the forthcoming years to qualify for the 2022 World Cup. So during the 2022 World Cup, they managed to make it to the last 16 again. So obviously most people will genuinely remember that. It's quite within the sort of cultural zeitgeist of recent times. And it was quite a heartbreak for Japan, really, because they managed to draw 1-1 with Croatia and unfortunately lost on penalties. But once again, last 16, so in successive World Cups is a great job. And unfortunately, after that, hasn't played for the Samurai Blues at all, which is a shame. But his influence can be seen. And after we have another quick word from our sponsors, I will talk to you about the influence I think he's had at the club. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make sure that we are your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. So, yeah, what are the influences that Maya's had on the club? Well, he was a great player for us, number one. He was a great character on the pitch and at the club as well. He is known very well for his great relationship with Romeu, who continues to also play, quite intense top flight football. Famously went to Barcelona quite recently, which is nuts, but we always knew that he would come good. And obviously he was previously a Barcelona player beforehand. But yeah, they still have a great friendship, which is great. Obviously one of my favorite players of all time. I think he was just a really good character, and I think he really cares about the club. And you have a lot of players that sort of go and come and go and don't really talk about it, right? Like James Ward-Prowse has played significantly more, and I know that there's been interviews where he talks about checking where we're at in the table. And same with sort of like, Danny Ings was considered to be sort of an absolute club hero. Comes back, scores a bunch of goals. I'm not using the word legends. They're not club legends. Don't get me wrong, but I think that you can tell his love for Southampton has always been there, and we're still an incredibly important club. And he will come back to watch us play when he's in the UK. And I think he did watch us play. I remember he came back during our relegation season, and unfortunately got to watch a pretty dismal performance. But like, the love's still there. It was also quite notable that when Yuki made his move, he congratulated him on sort of on the socials as well, and was glad to see sort of another Nagoya Grampus alumni and fellow Japanese international get and come and play for us. You know, where we've kind of don't think we've quite got sort of the Celtic effect of always having a Japanese player or multiple Japanese players, but we are a club that, you know, we're quite happy to sort of look at the J League. And another example of that is the fact that we've got Kuryu Matsuki. So he has recently transferred to us. Anyone who's sort of paid any attention to the J League will know about him. He played really, really well. He's also one of those sort of like bargain sign-ins of Football Manager, especially since they introduced the J League properly. But he's obviously currently on loan at Giuseppe, and will hopefully play a bigger role for us in the future. So yeah, we've got, you know, potentially he's also a Japanese international for the under 23s. Yeah, so for me, Yoshida's just an all-time great Southampton player, and I know that, you know, we could talk about the Letiziers and the Benalis and until the cows come home. Don't get me wrong, but there are also people that I think that are part of our sort of most recent history where they might have not had sort of the fame of like a Virgil van Dijk or like the goals of like a Danny Ings, etc. But Maya Yoshida, I think, was always a saint through and through, and always keeps his attention on us, and really cares about the club, and you can tell. And it's really nice to see some of his international teammates make the move to our club as well. Especially where, you know, weirdly they both sort of started in the same club as well, which was something I discovered during my research into a club that we've, you know, as I said, me and Greg have sort of followed alongside in the background. So yeah, it's been a bit of an emotional journey going through, and again, I didn't quite realise the impact he had on his international team. Like 126 caps is nothing to sort of bat your eyes at, you know. So he was a fantastic player, club internationally, fantastic player for us. And I wish him the best in what's left of his career. But yeah, so obviously that was one of my longer segments about an international saint, which is why it didn't make it into the other episodes. And I thought maybe he deserves his own episode. So thank you for joining me today to talk about one of my favourite players and the international journey he went on, and why I think, you know, very sort of flew under the radar at Saints, but, you know, he was incredibly important for his national team and important for us during times as well. So thank you very much for joining me. We'll be back next week, probably with my co-host as well. It's been a pleasure, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. Have a lovely evening or afternoon or morning or whatever you're up to.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.